We may start now, please.
Hi, please unmute yourselves, all of you.
Yeah. So good evening and a very warm welcome to Calcutta Management Association. And you just saw and heard a little bit about it and what the Calcutta Management Association has done over the years, that we have hosted some of the luminaries of the corporate and the academic world, and that combined knowledge, wisdom, and thoughts of these distinguished personalities are something that has enriched us immensely and helped us to fine-tune our activities in our respective areas of work. We have started since lockdown on a series of webinars about leadership in turbulent times, and which we thought would help us calibrate our thought processes. And with their help, advice, and guidance, we thought that we could ride these challenging times well. But we said that that's too serious, that's too hard, that's too something that is worrying us. So why add worry on worry? And we organized this event called Conversations, where in a series of fireside, so to say, if I call them fireside chats, we have kicked off a conversation between two personalities, where we started with Mir and Jimmy Tangri, followed up with a discussion on the great Satyajit Ray with two of his prodigies, Varun Chandra and Siddhartha Chatterjee. And this evening, ladies and gentlemen, we are gathering here with us two kings and kingmakers, so to say. One whose pen and voice has painted this wonderful game called cricket and other sports that we know, and the other who has lifted cricket in this region to unexpected heights by instilling professionalism and that we can and we will. He, ladies and gentlemen, was perhaps the first star cricketer from our region and perhaps our own Mr. Cricket. May I request Mr. Ramesh Pandey, Executive Committee Member, CMA, to introduce these two extraordinary gentlemen. Mr. Pandey.
Ramesh, you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, Boria?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Now, good evening, Arunji.
Good evening.
Good evening, Boria Bhai. In
Good
fact, Boria and I have been working together for the past 3 years. We have set up a beautiful museum. Arunji, you should have visited that museum. And certainly we will do many more activities with you, around you, once the COVID problem gets over. Now I would like to introduce Mr. Boria Majumdar. He is a Rhodes Scholar, completed his doctorate on the social history of Indian cricket at Oxford University in March 2004. And the thesis was published in India by Penguin Viking as the much acclaimed 22 Yards to Freedom, a social history of Indian cricket in December 2004. Thereafter, Dr. Majumdar went on to teach at the universities of Chicago, Toronto, and La Trobe, where he was first distinguished visiting fellow in 2005. He was also the first Indian to be awarded a fellowship to work at the International Olympic Museum, archives in Lausanne, Switzerland. Currently, he is a senior research fellow at the University of Central Lancashire and adjunct professor, School of Journalism, Australia, and Indigenous Studies, Faculty of Arts at Monash University. He was a visiting fellow at Trinity College, University of Cambridge in 2009. His last book on cricket, 11 Gods and a Billion Indians, published in 2018, very beautifully written book, was awarded the Rabindra Puraskar in June 2018. He also co-authored Sachin Tendulkar's best-selling autobiography, Playing My Way. I think that is the best book I have read so far. Coming back to Arunji, fighters may be destroyed but never defeated. And then there are who overcome both destruction and defeat, ensuring that fight prevails over hazards of life. There cannot be better words than these to describe Mr. Arun Lal, a fighter both in cricket field and in life. Arun Lal played 16 tests and 13 ODIs for India and was a prolific run scorer in domestic cricket. He was the man behind Bengal and East Zone's rise in domestic cricket during his playing days in the 80s and 90s, and even today, today also he's the main inspiration for cricket in Bengal as the mentor and chief coach. A recipient of Cricket Association of Bengal's Lifetime Achievement Award, Lal nonetheless believes that the ultimate recognition for him will come with him winning the Ranji Trophy, which he was very close, however, unfortunately missed it this time. That he will not give up this battle so easily can be easily gauged from his life story and the bravery with which he battled and defeated a life-threatening disease. But he also comes out as a person who believes in destiny when he says, "I am grateful to Providence." I can't quite explain this, but I never felt threatened or intimidated by my disease. I never thought that any harm is going to happen to me. Belonging to a cricket family, his father, uncle, and cousin, all having played first-class cricket before him, Arunji also had a brilliant academic career, holding a master's degree in economics and standing 6th from Delhi University. But it was destiny, perhaps, that he was sucked into cricket, which made him a star that he is today. Great to have both of you on board. I'm sure the spectators are going to have a lovely time. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. If I'm allowed to kickstart the conversation, I will say two things. One, at this point in time when we are all struggling with COVID and Amphan in Bengal and COVID nationally, two watchwords define our lives. One, optimism. Two, hope. These are the two words that the world needs, not only us in India, or for that matter, us in Bengal. And if one person stands and symbolizes and embodies these two words through his life story, you don't need to look beyond Arun Lal. You want to fight COVID, look at what he's achieved and what he's fought, and you will realize how simple COVID is to fight. You know about resilience, you know what Arun Lal has gone through. After this conversation, you will feel nothing is impossible. That's what Arun Lal stands for. For me, he's a very, very serious inspiration, kind of mentor, someone I have forever looked up to, analyzed, studied, because when he led Bengal to that Ranji Trophy win in 1989-90, Shambharanda was captain, but Arun Lal, all of us know what he did. That's when I was shaping my national imagination and understanding of cricket, thereby going on to do a PhD in the subject. So this is an absolute pleasure, matter of absolute pleasure to have him with me in this conversation. So thank you, CMA, for allowing us to speak to each other. It's so great to see you, Dada. So great to see you. First and foremost, I'm delighted that you are healthy, you are safe. That's the most important point. But without wasting time, let me just say, we've had enough of negativity. Now the government of India has allowed people to go out there and practice. I'm seeing the national hockey team start to do that. I'm seeing some images of the Cricket Association of Bengal meeting to formulate strategy. What, according to you? I'm also seeing England versus West Indies agreeing to play a series in July. Yes, in a bio bubble, Southampton, Old Trafford. What, according to you, is the way forward for world cricket?
Well, to begin with, thank you very much for all those kind words. You, Boria, you've been a good friend all this time. I keep following you everywhere you go. Yeah, but coming back to this, you're absolutely right. The two things that we really need to keep is optimism and hope. Because, when you look at something like this coronavirus, this virus is not going to go away. You've got to learn to live with it. No virus has ever gone away. After a while, it sort of settles into the system. You know how to battle it. You know how to combat it. You know how to live with it. And in time, I'm not too hopeful of vaccines, but in time, you do get certain, the medical and scientific community does come up with certain ways of battling it. Maybe certain medications that can actually prove effective against it. So we've got to live for that. In the meantime, we've had this lockdown. We've slowed the progress of this virus. It needs hosts to stay alive and progress, and we've stopped that progress. We've done an absolutely marvelous job. But, you know, you can't carry on doing that, and you've got to get on with life and you know, come back to normal. I suppose that's the way forward. And eventually, certain things will change. You know, the social distancing, you'll be a little hesitant to hug and kiss each other, and you're going to be, you know, washing your hands more often than not. And that's the way forward. And you've got to believe that, you know, you're going to be able to live through it. I suppose that's the way it is. And in July, I'm so glad that the series is on in England, and the other countries will follow, and so shall domestic sport and every other activity.
Okay, so let me be very blunt here and ask you a straightforward question. Head coach of the Bengal cricket team asked by the state association in maybe a couple of weeks from now that go out there at the Eden Gardens and coach your team. You up for it?
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I think that's the way forward. We've got to get on with it, with a few adaptations, of course, be as careful as possible. And yeah, believe in the fact that that is the way forward. And, you know, looking at the numbers, I don't think it's such a big problem. Hopefully that we have arrested, like I said, hopefully we've arrested the advance of this virus, and we'll try and keep it like this. But who knows about the future? In case the numbers suddenly multiply, then you might have to think again for a short lockdown. But you cannot have an extended lockdown, as we've all seen. It causes more misery than good.
Absolutely. I mean, and every country, if you see the West, if you see today, Italy opens up, Spain opens up, they've opened borders also. The United States has opened up, though that's not the ideal country at this point. Australia, New Zealand, both countries have opened up. They've combated the virus. So sport is restarting, and that is what you and I are about to talk today. Okay, let's try and understand the nature of cricket. We've already seen the ICC Cricket Committee say that no use of saliva. We've seen certain adaptations come into the game already. What is your take on the nuances that you as a coach or as a player will have to follow going forward? Do you think, so two questions, Mr. Lal, to sort of set it up. One, technically, how do you see this game evolving? No saliva, no, you know, other, so no, every person will wear his or her own clothes. The umpire will do certain things which was not done in the past. So the technical and rule side of things. And secondly, very, very important, what is your take on fans? Are you sort of convinced that at this point in time, cricket behind closed doors is the solution, at least in the short and medium term?
In the short term, yes, Boria. I think, you know, because these are uncertain times. We know nothing about the virus. Vaccine, we still haven't had a vaccine for HIV. So when we'll get a vaccine for a virus like this, who knows? We're not going to rely on it. A lot of uncertainties. We don't know whether sweat actually can contaminate you. A lot of things are there. I'm told that other than droplets, you can't actually contract it. It's not something that you can give each other unless you are in very close contact. So soon it will evolve. A lot more information will come in. But in the very short run, yes, you can have without fans. But even in the medium term, I think the fans have to be allowed in, because you've got to get back to normal. You've got to get back to normal life. And the faster we do that, the better, certainly with masks and maybe not cramming in as they were. And there will be special rules that if the earlier stadiums would accommodate 1 lakh, maybe 30,000 in there for the time being. But yes, you've got to go forward.
Mr. Lal, I'm actually in the process of publishing a paper which will come out next week in the world's premier academic journal, Sport in Society. It's a peer-reviewed journal, where I'm actually arguing that this is an opportunity. What I'm arguing, I will take your permission and state it in 1.5 minutes and then want you to react on that. I'm saying that so far what we have done is, as far as cricket is concerned or any sport, take Eden Gardens, an IPL game on, we've put up 30 cameras, we've captured the Eden Gardens, that's what our focus is. And say, you know, India versus Pakistan playing at Eden Gardens. Do we really know what an Indian fan sitting in Mumbai is doing, in America is doing, in England is doing, in Australia is doing? The answer is no. The answer is that that fan sitting in any part of the diaspora or any part of the country is actually a passive consumer. Or a Pakistani fan sitting in any part of Pakistan is actually a passive consumer, because all that the stadium does is we are focusing our cameras on that stadium and showing the broadcast. What I'm arguing is that here we don't have fans. What we can do using mobile technology, using digital technology, which is well advanced, is real time, the broadcaster. So in a sense, what I'm saying is your sofa where you are sitting is a stadium, where each of our people who are watching this broadcast, their household is a stadium. I'm saying everything, a restaurant is a stadium, a cafe is a stadium. What I'm saying is you and I sitting with each other watching a cricket game at home, Jasprit Bumrah picks up Babar Azam, I hug Arun Lal, we take that video, tweet it, Star Sports or whichever sports broadcasters is the host broadcaster, takes that video, puts it out real time. I'm saying by doing that, in one instant, you are actually democratizing spectatorship and increasing its ambit to every part of the world. And when you are doing that, you are actually expanding the economic appeal of the sport, because each of these people sitting in every part of the world all of a sudden feels empowered thanks to digital technology and AI. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great thought, Boria, because if that were to happen and you can show it live in real time across the board, I mean, across the world, somebody sitting in Canada and how they're celebrating and how they react to a shot or an out or everything, I'm sure that will add a lot of appeal. Maybe you could have a little few boxes, being shown where you have a few, from all over the world. Yeah, that could be something very interesting. You've really opened my mind to something like that. In the short run, that can be attempted. And who knows, if that's a success, that might be the future.
You know what, I will expand that and sort of ask you my next question that, and this is something that I've discussed with broadcast heads like Uday Shankar, and he says, look, creativity is what should define the way forward rather than stringent rules. And here I'm thinking of documentaries like Michael Jordan or documentary like The Test. So are you open to the idea that because we don't have fans, we are talking about real emotion? Will you allow a camera to be put inside your dressing room? Real time Arun Lal telling Manoj Tiwari or Anushtup Majumdar, this is what you need to do when you go out there and bat. And I, as a fan, consuming that broadcast at home, are exposed to the thinking of the head coach and the captain or the senior cricketer real time, like we've seen in documentaries. Is that a possibility for you?
Yes, certainly. Anything that adds value to the sport and spectatorship. Of course, Boria, that's the eventual idea, isn't it? To play sport. Yes, it is in search of excellence and everything else that goes with sport and character building. But eventually, you are wanting to reach out to the fans, to the spectators, and maybe inspire and add value and entertain everybody across the world. So certainly that's one thing definite. In fact, I think that's on the cards in any case, adding value to the people watching television, that, strategies which may not, is not such a closed, secret these days. Most coaches know what the other coaches are actually advocating for them, depending on what their team composition is, what their strengths are, what they view as our strengths and how they are going to react. Most of it is anticipated by each coach against the other. So it's not such a thing that is got to be held a closely guarded secret, other than maybe susceptibilities of cricketers. And, my cricketer is, I feel that he's a little weak against a certain kind of a strategy. That I'll probably not divulge. But certainly what you're suggesting will add value. Because otherwise, I've already started to believe that what I'm seeing on television is the same picture every day. Every one-day game or every 2020, more or less, 80% of it is pretty much plain to see that he'll bowl 3 overs or he'll bowl 2 overs, and every time it's the same thing. It's like reviewing the same film 100,000 times. So yeah, these kind of innovations and creativities have to come into the game.
Absolutely, and in fact, I'll add a third one. I mean, I'm of the opinion that, for example, you use Segway or you use spider cams or whatever cameras you want. Say, for example, a bowler has picked up 5 wickets. Go down real time, talk to him. Talk to the captain real time. When you are celebrating, you are not able to cut to the gallery and show the fans celebrating. Use those 15 seconds to speak to one of the players who's celebrating real time and turn the match on its head. Or if a batsman has scored 100 or a match-defining innings and is walking back to the pavilion, he's obviously in a good frame of mind. Go down, speak to him real time as he walks back. The moment you are able to do such things, you are actually capturing emotion real time, which will add to coverage, which will add to creativity, which will add to the sport. Now, what I know know, but I mean, I will also put this on record that the BCCI doesn't want to announce it, and they are right in doing so, because they do not want to be labeled insensitive, is I think there is a plan, if the World T20 gets pushed back, to host the IPL in October. And I'm told by multiple franchise owners who I'm in touch with that that is a real possibility. What is your take on that? Would you advocate an IPL in October in India? Does that sound a good plan to you if the World T20 is pushed back?
Of course. You know, the IPL is a out and out entertainer. The whole nation has been waiting for it. I know so many people who are very disappointed that they don't have the IPL this year. Forget about the, the loss of profits to the board, and the main problem would be loss of revenue to the players as well. So it's a terrific tournament. I enjoy it very much, even though I prefer watching Test cricket. For that limited period, that, everything that goes with the IPL is not just 2020 cricket. It's a mode of entertainment, which I quite enjoy. The battles within battles, and the huge amount of interest that it generates, huge amount of revenue that it generates, which again that goes into the BCCI coffers, which percolates down to the grassroots through all the associations, which help all cricket, across the board. In fact, cricket has prospered enormously because of the IPL generated funds. So yeah, I would definitely advocate, if there's even a small window, even if it's not such a large, long tournament, even an abridged or abbreviated tournament would be great.
From what I know, if the World T20 is pushed back, and we should get to know around the 10th of June in the next ICC meeting, that there will be a window of close to 6 weeks. Now that for me is good enough. That 6 weeks they should host the IPL between October and middle of November, after which the Indian team travels to Australia, gets itself quarantined, then starts playing the series. So it is actually a real possibility. I mean, if the virus situation, as Mr. Lal said in his introductory comments, it does not spiral out of control, and if we do not have a torrent of cases and a torrent of fatalities, fingers crossed we will not, then I do think that the IPL is a serious possibility as far as India is concerned. Mr. Lal, one critical question now. I mean, you and I both know that the BCCI is in a position to take care of its elite cricketers, even the Ranji Trophy level. You guys are elite cricketers, elite coaches. You will be taken care of by the board, by your respective associations. Are you worried about the next level, the underage, under 13, under 15, under 17, say Ramesh Pandey's son, who's a budding cricketer? Are these people being looked after? Have you heard of any plan? Or if not, what is your take? Because according to me, people who are in danger as a result of COVID is, in Indian cricket at least, is not so much the elite level, but the junior level, the sub-junior level, both men and women.
Yeah, Boria, that is the definite worry. Because, the paucity of time, we've lost so much time. If you're going to accommodate all this, it's the logistics, the amount of matches that the board actually runs is marvelous to know. The underage cricket, and the 23s, and then the seniors, and enormous amount of matches, which not only is a logistic nightmare, but from the positive part of it is it's revenue for the cricketers, and of course it's giving them an opportunity to show what they're made of. So the fact that this year they're also contemplating having domestic cricket, which is going to be squeezed in with lesser matches, that's in itself is a worry. But these are uncertain times. These are not normal times. So when you're in times like this, certainly some things will take a hit. I do hope that the BCCI, I know it's going to be very difficult, that they also run the same underage cricket as they have been doing, maybe with a few lesser matches, with the league phase, which is reduced slightly. But that's the way forward.
And you've already said this, and then as far as the Ranji Trophy cricket is concerned, or other domestic competitions are concerned, this actually isn't a problem. I was having a conversation with Rohit Sharma the other day, and I said cricket without crowds, and he said it's like going back to the Ranji Trophy. Yes, fans are important, and we will still play for fans. They should know that it is for their safety and our safety that we are doing this. We'll still play for fans. Having said that, we will adapt, because ultimately the sport is most important and beyond everything else. You agree?
Yeah. Listen, you have no choice, Boria. You have to adapt. You have to go on with what you are served. You can only play the field you're given. So, of course, that is. And now that you say about Ranji Trophy, I think one incumbent responsibility of the board is to bring back the crowds in Ranji Trophy. You've got to, too much is being put in. All your eggs, all your concentration and will is generated towards international cricket and, the likes and the IPLs. But you've got to put in a lot more focus to the Ranji Trophy. You've got to treat it as your premier tournament. There are lots of things that they must do to it to revive it and to get the crowds back. Like you've got the IPL, why can't you generate crowds or at least have an effort to generate more interest in the domestic competition? I'm sure it can be done.
Okay, that's a good thought. Now, if I ask you a couple of questions as a coach, your players have been in lockdown, including elite players. When you get them back, I was having a chat with the BCCI guys, Bharat Arun, the bowling coach, and R. Sridhar, the fielding coach, and they have a 4-pronged strategy, is what they tell me. Football, we know with the German Bundesliga and the Spanish league, which are both restarting, that there is a standard SOP for elite athletes. What about you? I mean, when your Bengal cricketers come back or your elite cricketers come back, how will you get them back? Is there a issue with bowlers? Will they struggle more? Obviously, the skill will remain, but in terms of fitness, in terms of them coming back, what is the SOP? Have you guys thought about it?
Well, Boria, I've been blessed with, a sort of a momentum in the Bengal team. They're suddenly feeling very buoyant about their prospects. And that has inspired them into, doing a lot of fitness in this interim. They have worked very hard. I am very proud of them. I think they have not needed me to really push them. It's their own will that is pushing them forward now. Very happy with their efforts, wherever they are. Because we are in touch, we're doing the same thing, online training with the coach. We're blessed to have a fantastic trainer, and he is overseeing everything. Each one has been given according to the facilities that he has at his command in these lockdown. Some have it, some don't. Some have access to a ground, some don't. Some have gyms in their homes, some don't. So accordingly, he's turned out and made out programs for each player, which are monitored every day. Every day we see them training. Every day they come up with their questions and answers. And we've had, like a training exam, a certain program set out in 1 minute, so many push-ups, so many sit-ups, so many this, so many that, to be able to assess your own fitness levels and how you can improve upon it. So fitness-wise, I am very, very blessed and happy. Yes, skill-wise and practice-wise, we are waiting to get on, into either an indoor stadium or into the nets and work accordingly. We have put our minds to a lot of things, what we were lacking last year, how we can improve. The main buzzword in getting ready for a season is, how have we improved over last year? Where were we lacking last year? How can we improve as a team? How can we improve as individuals? The accent for fast bowlers, as I see it going into the next season, is going to be on pace and bounce. Because if you can't use saliva and you can't use sweat, you're going to have to come up with something else in your armory. For that, you need a lot more fitness. So you may be fast last year. There's no point being the same this year. You've got to be much, much better, faster, bowl longer spells, bowl venomous spells. And that's got to be, the focus, the central focus of the bowling unit. The batsmen have to be working accordingly. You've got to work and see what went wrong last year. In fact, we as a batting unit didn't do quite as expected. And we were bailed out by the bowlers and lower order batting. So they've got their own tasks cut out and their own programs. So we're going to be, I think we are pretty much focused. I am very happy with the progress so far. In fact, the lockdown may have actually worked in their favor, given them time off from the game, introspect, think about your game, where you can be and where you should be. Visualize yourself in the next 3-4 months coming into the next season, and how you see yourself in the next 1 year away. So in many ways, it's been a plus and an advantage.
Okay, that's excellent. I mean, the point that sort of for me is the highlight is what you said about the bowlers. That's the second time I've heard this. I mean, I heard it from the Indian coaching staff also. But what I know, you can still use sweat. I mean, saliva is what has been banned. I mean, so far, they have allowed the bowlers, at least the ICC and what I've been reading around the world, players are allowed to use sweat on the ball. And that's something we will see how things evolve. What about, can you give me a dateline? I mean, for example, yesterday I was seeing a video that the Indian hockey team, the elite hockey team, which has qualified for Tokyo, both men and women, they were out there in the National Stadium in Delhi starting to practice. Yes, there were thermal guns, temperature checks, and all of that was being done, but they were out there practicing. Do you have a date yet from the Cricket Association of Bengal or within your fraternity as to when y'all will be able to get back to Eden Gardens and start outdoor practice?
You know, Boria, our season generally starts around end September, early October. So we still have a little time. In fact, last year, we started our training from 1st of July. So we still have a little bit of leeway there. So the idea was not to rush it. Let the lockdown be formally announced as open after the 8th. I think the association will take a call on the 10th to have batches and to work separately, you know, with all the social distancing norms, maybe not crowd the indoor stadium. And we're working on that. And I think very soon, maybe mid-June, we should be there in batches at least.
Okay. Just for anyone who is listening, I am also already seeing questions from Orpon Mojumdar to me, grassroots improvement and broadcasting of sport. I couldn't read the rest, Orpon, so if you could add to that. Anyone who wants to ask me or Mr. Lal a question, please sort of type out your question and send it to us on the chat room. It's 7:07, so I've been given 3 or 4 more minutes to speak to Mr. Lal, and thereafter I will open it up for questions for 10 minutes. So please give us your questions and we will take as many as possible. Mr. Lal, 2 final questions before I let you go. Rather, we take questions. One, the India v Australia tour. You know, it is supposed to be one of the high points of cricket this year. Are you, and now international teams are getting ready to this regime. As an international cricketer, are you okay with this plan that I go into a country, I quarantine for 14 days, thereafter I train? I mean, is this according to you? And, you know, obviously if there is a hotel next to the stadium, like in Southampton or Old Trafford or Adelaide, people are staying there. You satisfied with what world cricket has done? This is a good plan according to you?
Listen, this is not ideal, Boria, but as we evolve, as we encounter the problems, how they evolve, how the virus evolves, will actually dictate how we go forward. By the time the Australia tour comes, it may not be required to have a 14-day quarantine. I'm pretty optimistic it may be just a 7-day quarantine. Who knows? But for the time being, if there is a quarantine, that's not an ideal situation as a preparation for the tour. But then if that is the way it's going to be, that's the way it's going to be. There's nothing else you can do about it. Maybe those 14 days you use to strategize, to understand, to meditate, to work your mind towards it, to relax. Who knows? These sort of things will evolve as time goes by. But okay, you have no choice.
Okay. There's a question here which says broadcasting rights and ticket sales contribute to 60% of the revenue generated. How will sports be affected economically as a result of it? Also, how can the sports industry overcome this? I'll take this and give Mr. Lal the next bite of the cherry. Frankly, ticket sales do not account for 60%. I'll give you the IPL example and you will know what it's about. 600 crores from the title rights, 3,300 crores from telecast rights, which is 4,000. Only 5% comes from ticket sales. So even if it is cricket behind closed doors, as far as the IPL is concerned, BCCI is good, and the IPL is not an aberration. I'll give you the Cricket Australia scenario. As far as the India tour is concerned, if the India tour is held behind closed doors, Cricket Australia stands to earn $300 million, which is 1,600 crore rupees. That's what will keep Cricket Australia going. Ticket sales would have amounted to 30 or 40 million in Australia. Again, not the major part, about 12% of the money. So as far as cricket is concerned, most other sports, you see Bundesliga, Serie A, EPL, as long as cricket or football or any of these sports starts to get going, I think we are good, because we will see television revenue sort of sustaining sport for a while. Mr. Lal, the next question to you Do you think the technology of polishing the ball or manufacturing the ball would change given the COVID concern? Is it an opportunity for innovation in sport? And this is from Aurobindo, I think. Yeah, I could not see your surname in the question.
Yeah, certainly an opportunity to, view it differently, maybe come out with certain balls which already have shine on one side and not on the other. Maybe change balls after 30 overs. Who knows how it evolves? It certainly is an opportunity, or at least it gets you thinking. There would be a lot of ball manufacturers who would be trying to replicate what a ball is like after 50 overs and what value sweat and saliva add to the armory of a bowler. So keeping all that in mind, a lot of brain churning would be going on, and certainly it's an opportunity. But I am still hopeful as we go forward, Boria, that, we will be business as usual. I am pretty much hopeful that it might happen. Who knows? We might have a sanitizer break every 2 overs or every 3 overs. Maybe a 30-second off where every cricketer comes in and sanitizes his hands and nose and face and carry on as with business as usual. Maybe we'd get some kind of a new sanitizer which itself stops you from contracting the virus for maybe for a short time. But I am still hopeful that within the next 6 months, we'll be back to near normal.
Okay, you take the next one from Adhi Kuptu, and I will take one from him as well. What's next for Bengal cricket and the talent across formats, your vision?
Well, I've always believed that we've got terrific talent. We suffer from weather conditions where we cannot play cricket for at least 4 or 5 months in the year. That's when the others get ahead of us. But we've got to make that up with fitness levels. I did feel that we were not as fit as the rest of the country, and we're working on that. We're almost there. Fitness has also bonded us together. Our talent, the fact that we have a smaller cricket season has, in a way, helped us mentally, because we've now adapted to it and we can bring out our best with very little preparation. So in that sense, that is one big plus for us. And now that we know what we have to do, now that we believe that it's there, the momentum has been provided. As a coach, I've always felt that if with a little bit of luck and you can start the momentum, the ball rolling in your favor, then suddenly everything comes into place. Yet, this is just one good year in the Ranji Trophy. We've, it's a very tough tournament. I'm telling everybody this, that is much tougher than when I played Ranji Trophy. The competitive levels, the fitness levels, the amount of good players in every team. So, if you look at it, teams like Delhi, Bombay, Tamil Nadu, Vidarbha did not even qualify for the knockouts this year. So that's where the level of competition is. So Bengal has to keep its guard up, keep working, keep improving every year if you want to stay even half as good as what you were last year. It can very well happen. I mean, it's not very difficult for you not to qualify this year. So you've got to make sure that you are at your best. I do believe that we as a unit have the best bowling side in the country. Our batting is now got to really shape up and come to the party. If our, very talented openers, that the top 3 did not do well last year, if they start firing this year, then watch out, rest of the country. Bengali is back in the saddle. So, we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to understand that just to be where we are, we have to work twice as hard.
Fingers crossed to that, and I'm delighted to hear what Mr. Lal just said. Adip, your next question was about the Olympics 21 and sort of Indian sports go for podium at the Olympics in 21. What are the phase-wise preparations and competitive activities you visualize? First, let's put it this way. Mr. Lal is not that hopeful about vaccines. I am. I mean, if I read scientific literature from across the world, there will be some kind of protection. I don't know whether it's a vaccine, whether it's a therapy, partially effective vaccine, something is what I'm reading, whether it's Anthony Fauci, whether it's Europe, whether it's, in fact, as we speak, there's a vaccine summit going on where $8 billion are being raised. So that gives me hope. I think first step that we need to do, and this is a radical suggestion, I can be blamed for it. I think what has to happen is Tokyo should happen. How can Tokyo happen? There should be a deal between the WHO and the International Olympic Committee where, because Tokyo is also $40 billion. It's also Japan and its economy. It's also 206 countries. It's also world's coming out party in a sense post-COVID. So what I'm arguing is, if there is a vaccine, which I'm told, now the world thinks will come by the end of the year, early next year, some kind of intervention. If that happens, there should be a deal between the WHO and the IOC that you and me, if we are a stakeholder, if Mr. Lal is an athlete, I'm media, I'm broadcaster, I'm a fan, I'm linked with Tokyo in some sense, I should qualify as frontline worker. I should get that jab according to this deal between the WHO and the IOC. That's how you save sport, because there is tremendous amount of money and emotional quotient involved in world sport. And the number is not much. We're talking about 200 or 300,000 people. If we are able to vaccinate them or give them a jab and provide them protection, we are saving global economy worth at least $100 billion across sport. And we are also giving people a huge emotional high because everybody will follow the Olympics. India, don't only ask the Olympic question, ask the Paralympic question. I am predicting here on CMA, we will win 15 plus medals if Tokyo 21 happens and the Paralympics happens. And I'm talking Paralympics, not Olympics. As far as the Olympics are concerned, you will have to open up phase-wise. I don't think you need to do much till the end of the year. Tournaments will start, but then the athletes will have to gear up. Yes, badminton you've mentioned here. There will be some qualifying tournaments, but injuries, which was plaguing Sindhu, injuries, which was a real issue for some of our top stars, they will now be fit. So we will want to see Gopi nurture his wards. We will want to see the hockey team get to their best ability. And this peak, how they get to that peak, will define India's performance at the Olympic level. A few more minutes, so I'll ask Mr. Lal to take the next two questions from, okay, who is this from? Mr. Devashish Mojumdar, what is your Oshim Bishash? How can the IPL happen? What action Eden Harden? The question is not clear to me. Question is not clear to me. Will cricket be the same game again post COVID-19? Asks Rajiv Kumar, Mr. Lal.
We've sort of touched upon it in our conversation, Boria, but yeah, of course it will be the same game. There's not much that's going to change. I am very hopeful, very optimistic that it will be business as usual by the end of the year. Maybe there will be certain innovations coming in case this lack of saliva thing extends to quite some time. But more than that, the game is still bat and ball and runs, and the essence of the game is not going to change. It's maybe we're going to be a little more careful in our celebrations, don't come close in contact. There will be a lot of new regulations, as they've already been stipulated, in keeping your distance and maintaining things like that. But other than that, I don't see any major problems for the sport.
Okay, there's a question which says the issue that was raised by Rahul Dravid, that what happens if some player is infected midway in a test match? How will cricket rules be changed to accommodate such kind of a scenario?
Yeah, you'll have substitution. You'll be allowed to take, already in Ranji Trophy, not many people are aware of this, that when somebody gets injured during the game and he can take no other part, for instance, like, if you suddenly break your knee and you can't even stand and you're off the game. So there is a provision that you can request with the referee and the opposition captain to get a substitute from the playing 15, the 12, 13, 14, 15, to be in the 11 and take part in the game, provided the opposition captain agrees. And I think that will be made as a rule. There will be no provided the opposition captain agrees. It will be made that if, in case a sad scenario like this, somebody from the rest of the reserves can fill in for that cricketer, and everybody will be tested immediately, at least for whatever the tests are of temperature and things, and you carry on with the game.
That's a radical suggestion, because if we do not quarantine the rest of the players, will that be an issue? We don't know. As Mr. Lal said, some of the answers are still not known to us, but as time passes, we will evolve. If anybody told us that at the end of April, by the end of May and early June, you would be opening up and you would also start thinking in terms of sport opening up, clubs opening up, malls opening up, transport opening up, all of these things opening up, you and I can go and dine out. You would have said we are mad, but things have happened. And let me end this conversation with this note. There have been pandemics in the past. It is not as if this is the first pandemic. And every time there has been a pandemic, there has been disruption. But no pandemic has ever been able to defeat human civilization. Human civilization has always come up triumphant against every possible pandemic across time in every part of the world. And I am absolutely sure this time also it will not be any different. What is important is this is the first social media pandemic. We are all seeing this graph on our television screens, in our Twitter handles, in newspapers, this graph going round and round, 10 cases going up, 20 going down, 3 more deaths, 2 more fatalities, Bengal's percentage 2.3, national percentage 3.4, and that has gone into our heads. This is the first social media pandemic that we are facing in our lifetime. And frankly, that is something we need to be aware of. Last year, we lost close to 4 lakh people to tuberculosis in India. How many of us are even aware? 8,500 people, children, die in Africa every single day for malnutrition. How many of us talk about it? We are living in an age where this is a social media pandemic. Having said that, I remain hopeful, as much as Mr. Lal is, that no pandemic can ever defeat human civilization. And sport teaches us how to survive. Mr. Lal is a life story on survival as to how hope and optimism eventually thrives and emerges a winner. On that note, Mr. Lal, it was an absolute pleasure speaking to you as always. Thank you very much. Before I return it to the hosts.
Likewise, Boria. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. It was such a wonderful and eye-opening evening that both of you gave us. It is great news that we got a sneak peek into the fact that IPL can again happen in the October window. And Mr. Arun Lal, it was so great to hear what is happening at the end in the Bengal team, that they're out there. They've realized the shortcomings they've had in the last Ranji Trophy final. Things are happening. They're getting fit. Yes, fitness is something that is very important. And like you said, if the first 3 batsmen perform, then Bengal is back in business. So it was great having both of you. It was a great evening. It was enlightening. There's a learning that we are taking around. And Mr. Mazumdar, thank you so much for giving us the insight on the Olympics and your idea of WHO and India World Olympic Association coming together, I think will work wonders. And finally, thank you everybody who has joined us this evening. It was great having you all with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.